The budget reply was last night. It's been a big week, budget week. Joining me is the Industry Minister, Ed Husic. A lot in your space to get to. I do want to ask you, first of all, Peter Dutton's argument about reducing the permanent migration intake. Will that prove potent in areas like Western Sydney, where you live, where traffic is an issue, housing shortages are a big issue too?
So Peter Dutton wants to kind of talk about the vibe and not provide the detail. I mean, that budget and reply, it wasn't a budget and reply last night. That's a speech you give at a party conference. It doesn't provide really the confidence to the Australian public. This is a person in Peter Dutton who's done the thinking and calculated and done the detail required to stand a policy up. Even today, in one day after his budget and reply, he doesn't have a clear handle about where he would get to with his numbers, because it appears he's miscalculated and done things wrong. So if he wants to be an alternative government and he wants to use the floor of the House of Representatives to show that he can be an alternative government, then he should do what is required, and that is demonstrate his policy stacks up. At the moment, he's just talking about, I want this to happen, but can't tell you how he's going to make it occur.
The way the government's responded,
it's a mess. Yeah.
The way the government's responded, though, to Peter Dutton shows that you do recognise it's a broader issue that would resonate, because you obviously, Jason Clare, your colleague, has announced a cap on university students. You're already trying to reduce that number, so you know it's something that's a real issue.
Well, the contrast couldn't be clearer, because what you can see is different ministers in different portfolios working in a coordinated way to deal with this. So you'll see what Jason's doing as Education Minister on international students. You'll see the investments, for example, that have been announced by Julie Collins as Housing Minister to boost housing stock and to improve things. You'll see what Claire O'Neill's doing in that space, broader space of reducing numbers and making sure they fit in line with what we need and what's expected. We're doing that in a coordinated and thought through way. Peter Dutton is just burping out numbers and not really doing the detail.
What do you say to the sceptics around your government's proposal around Made in Australia, that governments shouldn't be picking winners, or, as it's been put, acting like venture capitalists?
Well, for some people, it's hard to take advice from people who've got both hands over both eyes. The rest of the world is making determined decisions to invest in capability. You know, they want to be able to reduce their dependency on concentrated supply chains. They recognise they've got to reduce emissions, and they also understand that they can build off local industry to make that happen. That's what you're seeing in the US. Here, we're trying to do the same thing, get to net zero, mobilise Australian industry to help us with that by making things here that can achieve that net zero ambition. So we want to back Australian manufacturing to do that. It'll create great jobs and help us in that process. Governments do make critical investments. Governments before us have, be it the Morrison government in Moderna and the mRNA facility that was stood up in Melbourne. What we're doing, building quantum capability in Australia, bringing Australians home to help us achieve that so we can power our economy longer term. Governments do make decisions from time to time in strategic investment.
On the quantum, I'll get to that in a moment. I do want to, there's some critiques that I should put to you on that one, but the missing component in when we talk about renewables and how they're going to firm, well, they call it firming up renewables, is basically batteries. Where is the government at on that? I know it was part of the story, but how much can we actually build here and make it viable?
So we've been working over the course, since we've come into government, in developing a battery strategy, the nation's first, to lever off our huge store of critical minerals. We've got probably the biggest stores on the planet.
And the battery strategy, when's that? That's coming up.
Well, if I can just finish, we have the greatest store of critical minerals, yet we only produce 1% of the world's batteries. And so the battery strategy is looking at, well, how can we lean into the value chain more? And we're looking to release that in the coming week. As part of the budget, we announced that would support the strategy, basically investments in battery manufacturing, over $500 million to help scale up local manufacture. we've got great firms, we've got pioneers in battery technology and great firms locally that we need to scale up. Energy storage systems are really important, and if we pair them up with the fact that we have, again, another great stat, we have more solar panels on rooftops per capita than anywhere else on the planet. So if we generate the power and we store it and we stabilise the grid, we also have a great, besides reducing emissions, a great job story to tell. And those are some of the investments that we're making as part of Future Made in Australia. It demonstrates what we can do when we put the resources and work with the private sector to make that happen.
Sci Quantum, that company, some Australian founders, but it's a US-based company now. Coalition's criticised you, saying it's not made in Australia, this is a US company, and then you've had others in the industry questioning the rigour around the process choosing this company. What do you say to those?
Okay, so there's two things you've raised. One is you've got people like Jeremy O'Brien and Terry Rudolph who founded Sci Quantum in 2015. They left our shores because, as is often the case, we got Australians with great ideas that don't get the backing, and it's other countries that recognise their value before us and get the commercial head start. These two said, we want to come back to Australia. We want to put Australia on the map and deliver one of the world's first fault-tolerant quantum computers. Huge. So we want to bring Australians back to build a stronger economy, one. And they came out of Uni of Queensland. So some of the people who've criticised it, who've been Queensland MPs, it's just staggering that they don't back Queenslanders who want to help the country.
So they're going to bring the company back, is that right?
They're going to start, they're going to set up their Asia Pacific headquarters here. They've got their headquarters there. They're not going to shut it down and kill off jobs in that space. They're going to open up, expand and create jobs here and work with the local ecosystem to be able to build stronger quantum sector that most countries get will drive future economic growth and productivity.
Some in the industry,
second point,
the rigour
I was going to deal with that.
Yeah.
So on that rigour point, we've been, I first met with this company back in October of 22. We have gone through since then, we announced this in May of 24, right? We've gone through a rigorous process of market testing, then subjecting that to technical analysis, backing it in with legal and commercial advice to structure a deal that's good for taxpayers, good for the economy, and allows the company to be able to grow, and also with commitments to the local economy as well. It's not just investing in them and saying that's that. They've got to work with the local community and economy as well. It's been through that rigorous process.
The local companies are complaining. Some of them are saying they've been dudded.
No, because we went through expression of interest, we went through market testing, over 20 companies asking effectively two things. How close are you to building a fault-tolerant quantum computer, and what are the spillover effects? That is, what benefits can you provide more broadly for the economy? And then subjected that to testing. Now, what we've done is no different to what the Liberals did when they backed silicon quantum computing out of Uni of New South Wales and Michelle Simmons. They put that money in there. We've done this, made this investment now, and the National Reconstruction Fund will support future investments in this space in the years ahead.
Fatima Payman has copped flack for her comments where she used the chant from the river to the sea. The Senate rejected the language. Should the Prime Minister remove her from her duties on the Foreign Affairs and Trade Committee?
The Prime Minister ultimately makes those decisions, right? And it's not for me to give him advice on your program about what he should do. What I would say about Fatima is this. People will have their views, strong views about what she should or shouldn't have said. What's gone missing in this is that you've got, particularly, it takes a lot of guts to go out on an issue as tough as this, as a first-term Member of Parliament, and to try and get people to focus on the moral issue at hand, which is the role of silence when, from her perspective, as she said, you've seen 35,000 people killed, they're being starved, and we're seeing what's happening in Rafah, which the international community has urged Israel not to do. And so she's focused our attention on that. I don't use that chant. I don't believe that chant is right when Israelis use it or Palestinians use it, because it's designed to limit our ability to get to a two-state solution. Fatima chose to use that. I wouldn't have done it, and I don't think she should have. But what I do back is Fatima's right to express her concern and the concern of others in the community that we are overlooking the fact so many people have been affected by what's happening in Gaza.
Do you agree with her that
Hamas's brutality.
Do you agree with her assessment that it's genocide?
Well, so here's the thing. I come from my parents are Bosnian, right? We saw what happened in the 90s in the conflict in the Balkans. And ultimately, the International Court of Justice made a call about genocide. And there's been in some of the ICJ's determinations so far, when they make that call, they've said there's plausible grounds to believe that that's happening. But I'll leave that to the ICJ to make. You think there's a question mark over that? I just want to make this point. Like Fatima, there are a number of us that will not stop speaking on the issue about the way in which 35,000 Palestinians have been killed by the Israeli government's actions over the course of this campaign in Gaza. And we cannot remain silent on that. As much as the coalition wants to focus on slogans, they have never expressed a view seriously about whether or not they believe that the Israeli government's conduct and their observance of international humanitarian law has been proper. I believe, as I've expressed on Sky, that there's been a systemic failure on this by the Israeli government to observe international humanitarian law. So many journalists have been killed and targeted.
You think there's a question mark over the genocide? The genocide question.
Question marks.
Because you're saying it's the ICJ that needs to decide that.
These matters get resolved by the ICJ. I think it's important that we respect that. I am saying to you, we should see Israel respect international humanitarian law, and we have a dedicated body that looks at these things about making a decision on genocide. I want them to do their work, but I also want us to recognise we're at a moment in time where one of the biggest human catastrophes occurring, and we cannot remain silent on it.
Penny Wong said it's hate speech from the river to the sea. Should Senator Payman apologise?
As I said to you, I don't use that chant, and I think we've got to a situation where people have expressed their views about what Fatima has said. I understand the huge burden that you can clearly tell Fatima is dealing with, as she said, in terms of it's a very much a conscience issue. I do get that, in particular, my friends in the Jewish community do not like that chant for understandable reason, and it's why I don't want Israelis to use that saying from their point of view, or Palestinians. We've got to get beyond the slogans, get to the heart of what's happening here. The longer term prospect for peace comes out of a two-state solution in that part of the world.